Hey everybody, this is my next video in my porting series, how to port a chainsaw. In this video we're going to go over port timing numbers, we're going to go over port shapes. Now, port timing numbers are not the end all be all of how a saw is going to run. It all depends on how you texture the port, how you shape the port, how it's shaped, flowed for velocity. There's a lot of things involved, but I'm going to try to give you a good illustration with these cylinders. Okay. Now in this build, in this video series, with my 372 with a 272 piston, I got 102 on my exhaust, 129 on my transfers, 76 on my intake. Blowdown's 27 degrees. If you guys don't know what that is, because I really don't know who my audience is right now, you take your exhaust minus your transfers and come up with 27. Okay, now case compression, like I said, I've been emphasizing this in my my videos because I've noticed when I've messed with this, I tried to push this number, I've noticed big changes. And how you figure this case compression number out, you have to subtract your transfers minus your intake. So 129 minus 76 equals 53 degrees. Okay. Good general starting point for a 372 on exhaust. We'll say around 102. That'll give you a good balance of torque and power in the cut. Now you can go to 100, it'll give you a little more RPM. You can go to 98. But keep in mind, if you go to 98, you're going to bleed off some compression. Remember, the higher this is, your exhaust port is, the less amount of time that piston has to come up here and compress. Okay, does that make sense? So if you're to run a 98 degree exhaust roof, you're going to make sure you have the compression to back it up. Like you might have to cut your base, drop the cylinder, cut the squish. Okay, makes sense. Intakes, like right around 78 degrees, maybe 76 degrees on a 372. Stock numbers on transfers, 122, 125. Okay, now it all depends on how the limitations in your cylinder and your blowdown number, your transfer number. Okay, obviously you can go long blowdown, you can go short blowdown. Long, I don't know, 127, 128 on your upper transfers. Short blowdown would be 120 on your transfers, like a 98 degree exhaust roof and 120 comes at 22 degrees of blowdown. But if you're going to go the short blowdown route with the 120 or even 116 on your upper transfers, I wouldn't really grind these out, okay, because you may lose power. You're not going to have the transfer velocity because, remember, in my next video, I'm going to illustrate this. When you have a short transfer duration like this, or long transfer duration like 116, you're losing case compression. So if you take these out, you're not going to have the transfer velocity, and therefore the saw won't run very well, if that makes sense. But if you're going to run a long blowdown, we'll say 127 on your transfers, you can grind these out because you have the case compression to back it up, if that makes sense. Okay. Just to show you, I did have that's why you see turd. You know why I have turd there? Because I did a cylinder a while back. I ground 100 on the exhaust, transfers are 122, intake 78. I thought, man, it's going to be a good runner. But I grind these way out. Man, that thing was a turd, T-U-R-D. like I said, in the next video, I'll explain that, what's going on with the transfer velocity and how to gain it back. So I obviously had to compensate this, and I fixed it. Okay. Like if you're going to run like a small saw, like a 40cc saw, I wouldn't go past, I'd go 105. This is for work saws. Okay, not a race saw, work saw, like 105, somewhere in there. You can go a little lower, but maybe 103, but the saw may not have the power in the cut because it's a small saw, and there's some saws that break that rule, like a 200T, Stihl 200T. You got like 98 degrees on the exhaust. Okay, let's see here. Obviously MS660, I'll go over some numbers here with the MS660. Pretty much stock numbers, 95 on the exhaust, transfers 120, intake 80. Now this isn't etched in stone because they've made different cylinders through the years, and these numbers obviously have changed. This is just a general reference. Now, yeah, it's another video, but like I said, long blow down, 126, 127. They can run good, like I says, but it's just getting it there to get it to run. A long blow down saw can run good, and it produces tons of torque. And it's just getting it there. Now short blow down, yeah, I think it's a little easier to build, not as much detail, but it's just things that I've experimented with. I'd love to do a video on that sometime. Okay, let's go over port shapes. Okay, now if you're going to raise your exhaust port, some things to keep in mind. Okay, see how I have this? We'll call that your stock exhaust port. Now, something to keep in mind. Okay, as this is your transfer. Okay, just visualize that as your transfer port. Okay, why you want to maybe flatten, okay, as the saw completed its power stroke, just getting ready to expel its exhaust, obviously your transfers help that exhaust out. That's why you get into blow down, okay, so it can blow that out your exhaust. But what happens when you have a port like this, your transfers, they can actually bounce off this part of your exhaust and cause what's known as reversion. Some of your exhaust will come right back down into your saw and your crankcase. Your saw will lose power. Okay, so when you raise your exhaust port, maybe flatten it a little, what happens is this transfer opens. Obviously your power stroke completed, and it's ready to expel its exhaust gases. When this transfer comes on, it can push that out better. So you'll have better power on top end, if that makes sense, okay? You don't want this too flat. You want a little wee bit of an arc. I'll show you. Okay. Right here. This here, exhaust port on the MS660, how symmetrical. On that short blow down cylinder, how very symmetrical that is. It's almost perfectly oval, and little bit of an arc here. You don't want it too flat because you might snag a ring. Okay, if that makes sense. Notice how there's no sharp edges or anything like that. Yeah, you don't want to have sharp edges because that doesn't do nothing for flow. Okay. Now intakes, with that MS660, this I actually wiped that off. I tried to freehand this back in, but it was just like this. On that short blow down cylinders, no sharp edges. Made sure I put radiuses. Now that will do good for your flow. Okay. Now this is what you don't want. This is just freehand stuff here. You don't want it sharp like this. You know, you want it more or less like this, or you can do like this. See how it's radiused here? You go shape your port like that. And when you shape your port, okay, just think of it like this. Look at this funnel, okay? Now look at this exhaust port, okay? Now look at how this is bigger out here versus in the cylinder, it's smaller, okay? Now that's going to help flow, and that's also going to create velocity, okay? Think of it like this, okay? Just think of it. I mean, you don't have to copy that. Just think of that, okay? Instead of just grinding this way up and having a port straight in and straight out, that's not going to do much for you. Same thing on the intake, okay? Like what I did here. Obviously, this is all JB welded, filled in. This is matched to the boot. Matched very well, and I found when you do that, that really helps performance. You'll get a big increase in performance in your saw, and it'll start a lot easier. But just think of it like this, okay? Okay, just like this. Notice how that's bigger here than it is here, okay? Like that. Just keep that in mind when you're shaping your ports. Okay, now your transfers, okay? Now on an MS660 style cylinder, you want your transfer like this. And the reason why you want it like this, if you can get it there, okay? Some cylinders, it's just the way it's designed, you might not be able to do that. This will give you a better torque and pull in the cut, because as soon as that piston cracks right here, you're going to have a higher velocity here, okay? Higher transfer pressure, if that makes sense. Make sure this is nice and round. All these are radiused. Nothing sharp, you know, because a sharp corner doesn't do anything for flow. Obviously, some of your aftermarket cylinders are like straight across like this. Not wrong with that, but it you know, it all depends. This can run well it can run well too, so okay. As you see in there's that. See that it transfers angled like that up. Yeah, that's what you want. Nothing sharp, no sharp corner, especially down in your lower transfers. Now, I find on MS660s, you got to be careful dropping these down to your cases, because I've noticed that it slows down the intake velocity. It doesn't run, it just doesn't run right. And I've obviously JB welded this back in on my other saw, and I'll tell you what, man, it runs way better. So, some things to keep in mind there when you're porting saws. Just say, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to answer them in the comments. I'll try to answer them the best I can. For something I don't know, and usually I know. But if something I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. I won't bullshit you. Okay, guys. Next time, keep on feeling the heat.